Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast number 44. In this episode, I had the pleasure to talk with the Polish architect and 3D artist Jakub Sobiczewski. Jakub has studied first at the Gdańsk University of Technology. Then he have had a Erasmus experience at the Technical University in Berlin. And after a few jobs in the architectural field and then in the Archviz field, some in Poland, some in Germany, he settled down in Berlin, and now he's working there as a freelance 3D artist. And he also is the founder or one of the co-founders of the Gamma Studio, which is also a studio for 3D visualization and real estate marketing. He's really passionate about VFX, and this is how I found him because V-Ray reposted some of his work, and he's a very talented designer and artist. And in this conversation, he gave me some insights about how he started being a freelancer, how to get cheaper, for example, software licenses, some offers which I didn't know about. So if you are into turning yourself into a freelancer, or you want to start freelancing as a 3D artist or as an architect, I think this is a very insightful conversation for you, because you can hear how he managed and how he did it. So it was very interesting. But before we start the conversation, I want to remind you that if you like what we're doing at TCI Podcast, you can support us now for free, completely for free, by simply subscribing our newsletter. And on the link below, you can click no matter which platform are you listening on, or you can follow us on social media. Instagram is at TCI Podcast, and LinkedIn is the Creative Insider page. So thank you very much, and thank you for your support so far. And enjoy this new conversation with Jakub.
The whole world stops just like that.
Hello, Jakub. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. And again, thanks so much for reaching out and inviting me to your podcast, your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for accepting my invitation. It's a pleasure. As I was just telling you, you're the first guest from Poland. I'm myself very international, with very international background. So for me, it's important to have people from as many countries as possible, so that the guests are also international, and we can discover also different cultures, different backgrounds, and it's lots of fun. So thank you very much for accepting my invitation.
Sure, it's a pleasure, and I'm honored to be a first Polish guest on your show.
Yeah, so we hope you're gonna do a good job with that. It's cool how I found about you, because I found about you through the V-Ray Instagram feed, because they reshared some of your work.
Yeah,
And man, like, your work is crazy good. Like, I was very much impressed.
thanks.
And I think a lot of, like, currently I'm seeing that more and more people, like, from Poland and Eastern Europe, are super good with 3D art, like VFX.
hmm
Do you have an idea why? Is it just random that this is going on, or is there any reason this is happening?
Uh, but to be honest, I never thought about it. I have a theory actually, because I don't think it's something new. I feel like people from Eastern countries were always on the top when it comes to creative stuff and art. And I would say like there are two big things about it. Like first is like uh, we can talk about the creative side and why they are actually good in 3D and art in general. And there's like the second aspect, why there are so many architecture visualization companies in Eastern Europe right now. So for me, it's like two different topics. And answering your first question, again, it's like I have a theory that when you grow up in a country that is post-communist, and there is actually not much when it comes to entertainment. And I mean, like in the 90s, for example, and obviously in the 80s and 70s, there was no movies, and you have to imagine a lot of stuff and learn a lot of stuff by yourself. And I think this kind of creativity and ability to learn new things very quickly is very common in these countries. Like even when you look at Bulgaria, like one of I think that the best rendering engine comes from Bulgaria. So it's like the different countries, and I would say they share the same thing. Like they are really good at 3D, basically.
Yeah, and I think also one more thing that, in my opinion, it's a factor is that these countries, as you said, post-communist countries, people are since the 90s, since the fall of the Berlin Wall, they have so to say free economics, so
Hmm.
people have chance to grow, and they are very motivated through the fact they finally have this opportunity,
Yeah,
and they're very much like motivated to work to learn these things. And I think also VFX and digital arts and 3D arts, it's a very easy business to develop on an international level by staying in your own country, and basically sometimes have like market prices which are Western European or American, but still live in your country and so to say grow somehow.
yeah.
And why do you say, what is your theory why there are so many offices about these things in Eastern Europe?
Oh, I mean, this is not actually theory. My theory was about like why there are so many good artists in Russia and in Ukraine and so on. But when it comes to it's a very difficult topic, I would say, to talk about. And I'm just trying to use to choose my words wisely. But unfortunately, the easiest answer is, unfortunately, they are cheap. They are cheaper than artists and companies working in the Western side of the world. And I can say it because I'm from Poland, so I get a free pass on that. But unfortunately, in many cases, this is the issue, that it's really really difficult to compete, especially when you live in again on the other side of the river, and it's really difficult to compete with prices getting lower and lower. And this is something actually that Fabio Palvelli and Jeff Model from CG Architect touch a lot. And I'm really glad that there are people out there who are educating young 3D artists also in Eastern Europe, and talk about the business side of this industry, because rendering services in countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Poland are significantly lower than prices in the Western world, unfortunately. And this is like for me, like a very huge factor that drives, clients to these countries.
I have another theory that's different. Like this is, of course, the main factor, as you were saying. But and Fabio, he was also on the podcast. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
seen that, and he talked also that he currently also sometimes works with clients with people in India, and then he needs to further educate Indian companies because they are like doing images for really really low
Oh,
prices, and it's like
absolutely.
here is like he tells them like these prices are really like really peanuts
Yeah.
for the Western market. But my theory is also that in countries like Eastern European countries, especially the one that are not part of the EU, I think it's way easier to also have cracked software because
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah. You're right. Yeah.
all maybe something that as I said, we want to talk here about real things, not like about political correct. And this is a way to lower down the prices of an image dramatically because
Yes.
uh, I don't know, the standard of the industry is 3ds Max or Cinema 4D, which both cost thousands of euros per year, and you have V-Ray and you have
I mean, you can get indie license for I think 250.
what kind of license?
Indie license. This is something new. They created it last year for people who make less than I think 100,000 euros per year. So basically, freelancers and small studios, and they created this indie license that you pay not. I think it was 1,050 something, but now you can pay only 250 if I'm correct. Like I may be wrong, but like 90%, this is something new.
Oh, that
And
sounds nice. That sounds nice.
yeah,
I
and
didn't know
yeah,
about it.
yeah, and so yeah, you're absolutely right. But again, if you like, let's say you live in Poland or Ukraine, and you're making the same money as would you like when would you live in Western country like Germany, you will be able to pay this amount for the software. So there is nothing holding you back to basically charge more for the renderings. I you know I was actually like having several conversations with Polish and especially Ukrainian artists, and it was really unbelievable for me how much do they charge for renderings. Like, and and unfortunately, like this kind of action is really irreversibly damaging the industry, and that already have some serious problems. So it's a broad topic, but I like I can talk in hours on that.
We have all the time we want. But I'm curious also to discover a little bit your background because I guess you like movies like Terminator from your from your art because I saw the images of these robots
Yeah,
staring at New York City. So, from what I could figure out on my own by a little bit stalking and researching about you in
okay.
the weeks before the podcast, you also have a background in architecture, right?
Yes, yes, I'm an architect.
And so I'm curious to start really from the beginning of this adventure. How happened that you decided to go with a creative path towards architecture? Was someone in your family into that field, or what drove you to do that?
Hmm. Wow. Well, that's really uh, I would say a long story, but I will try to make it short.
No, you can. No,
I don't want to bore your audience. Like it's
no,
gonna be.
nobody's bored. That's what about. Like, it's interesting because
I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure exactly when was it, but I was always interested in architecture and art and engineering in general. So ever since I was a kid, it was always fascinating to me, and I always like to draw, especially in school. when I'm not supposed to, during classes. And that was like really a big part of my life, like drawing stuff all the time, like comic books and like different drawings, like different characters and architecture. And I think like also like very important moment when it comes to this I would say artistic development, but it sounds like it sounds funny, but my parents gave me the first analog camera. And for your younger listeners, back in the day when you had a standard photo film camera, and you have to set everything manually, and you could take only 36 photos with that camera because there was like this film. It wasn't, the digital age was not yet there, so you were very limited. And but I'm saying it because it really had opened a like a whole new world for me when it comes to colors, composition, lighting, and actual science behind it, because you have to use different lenses and set like different times, and use different f-stops. So that was like really interesting for me. And I am very fortunate to have a father who, besides being an engineer, is also a passionate photographer. So I definitely had some help from the very beginning, and that really helped me to like pick the right direction, I would say, the right path.
Well, I think that was also a great, so to say, school for understanding really how making an image works.
Yeah.
But I'm curious if it's not a secret. How old are you? Because you were like saying my younger audience, so I don't know your age.
Oh, I'm 30.
Your
I'm
turn.
But I was 20 once, so.
But it's not like, no, you're not that old. So I think
Well, if you talk like to a person who is like 15 or 16, you are basically dead. Like 30 for them, it's like you were a grandfather or something. So because I'm joking, because I have like a cousin, and she's like 14, and for her is like 30 old man. Actually, like 30 years is like a old man. So I feel very old right now.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny they have like this. I have a brother. He's 18. He's younger than I am.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's well, maybe my brother. No, my brother just turned 19. Sorry. But still, like, he's way younger. And sometimes I do jokes like, I don't know. Do you know what is a floppy disk, or do you know why that icon looks like that, or do you know what is a Walkman?
The
And
boomer jokes.
yeah, well, no, we're still millennials, but it's crazy. Like, I mean, yeah, I have also seen many technological transitions, because I always say that if you were born in Bulgaria in the 90s,
Hmm.
it's like you were born in the 80s in like Europe or the US, because we would get like 10 years of stuff that are older than the what was actually
Hmm.
modern
Yeah.
days. I remember when I saw the first mobile phones, for me was like crazy technology. And we were talking about that in Bulgaria in the 90s, we were watching the TV show with George Clooney, if you
Oh
remember.
yeah, yeah, sure, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and they had the pagers, and
Ye-
in Bulgaria we didn't know exactly how the pagers work,
Uh-huh.
because and also back in the days you couldn't Google it, like you cannot
No,
go and
there was no internet. Yeah.
pager. So there would be one person that was maybe abroad or in the US who would figure out how it works. And
Oh my
then,
god.
like, through a word of mouth, you would understand what is a pager and, and how it works. So it was crazy shit.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that because I grew up in Poland, also in the 90s. So I don't think that there is such a difference between in that period of time between all post-communist countries. I definitely can relate to that.
And from which part of Poland are you from? And where did you apply to study architecture when you decided you're going to do
Mhm.
that?
I'm actually I was born like in a small town near Gdańsk in Poland. But I lived in Gdańsk and I studied in Gdańsk. Gdańsk, it's a like big city, big very old city in northern Poland with access to Baltic Sea. So you know, for those who don't know, where is it? But basically, yeah, this is my place where I studied.
And what was the procedure you needed to undergo to get a spot in the architectural faculty in Gdansk?
Hmm. Um, hmm. Oh, that was in 2009, I think. So I may make some mistakes when it comes to some timelines, but I think for me, basically, everything started in high school because for many young people, this is the moment when you need to make some kind of decision and pivot yourself into the right direction. And so for me, it was quite easy because I really liked science and especially physics, and I also really love art and everything related. So it like choosing architecture for me was like very easy choice. We also had like constantly some kind of renovations in my home, so I would say like practical architecture was also a big part of my childhood, and I was always around various like construction sites. And during the summer break, I always work at some I work on the construction site, so I have like a very solid practical background when it comes to bricklaying and concrete work. So so I have like a both, and I always like this. So architecture for me was like always a way to go, I would say.
But what did you have an entry test to get into
Oh
the
yeah, I'm sorry. If I remember correctly, there are like a couple of steps you need to take. And first of all, uh, just let me think. Like, well, what is the? Because it may be a little bit confusing for someone who doesn't know. So basically, in high school, you have to choose what kind of exam and level are you going to take, like the final exam. So you had to take obviously Polish language, one foreign language, and one additional exam on advanced level, like for example math, history, biology. So in my case, like besides Polish and English, I picked advanced math, advanced physics, and I think geography because like these were the topics that were most interesting for me. And and choosing these exams would help me later to get into the university because the final result is summed up with the points you get from these exams and also the internal exams on architecture. So in you had like to take also part in two additional internal exams, and it was drawing by hand and 3D geometry. It was like 3D geometry slash math test, but it was mostly like related to geometry and 3D. You had to imagine like different like find different solutions for like like different puzzles. I would say like with cubes, but it was all like math related. So in the end, all of the all of the points are summed up, and that determines whether you get a place or not.
Didn't you have also like a drawing sort of
Yeah.
act exam? Because I have a Polish colleague at work, and she sometimes, when she's waiting for something or just sitting somewhere, she would doodle something. She would just sketch something on any piece of paper, and her drawing skills are very impressive. And I was like, "You draw so well," and she was like, "Yeah, you need to, because in Poland you have to draw for getting into architecture." So she was pretty good.
Yeah, I maybe that I said it like it wasn't clear enough, but there are two additional exams, and one like the first part is drawing by hand. So you basically have this paper A0 format, and you have to draw for a couple of hours with a pencil. And the second part is this 3D geometry slash math test, and in the end, everything is summed up.
But do you draw architecture in this zero?
It depends. Usually, there is something that related to shapes and perspective, but there is usually something that it can be a model or some stuff laying around basically. So you have to like use. I mean, you have to show shadows, lighting, and also perspective.
Yeah, I heard that a lot from people who are from Bulgaria or Romania. That basically that's feels like it's a Eastern European way of accessing architecture. And how was your university life? Because I studied in Rome, and then took part in the Erasmus program and moved to Frankfurt,
Oh.
and somehow happened to stay here. But we had a lot of opportunities to go in Erasmus in Poland. And well, my goal was to go in a country where then eventually I would develop my professional career. So and for me, Germany was something attractive and new. But how was generally like your, because a lot of the people who went there were very happy with the university in Poland. And I'm wondering how were your professors? Because, for example, in Italy they were very snobby. I would say most of the professors. Here in Germany they were very down to earth, very easygoing. So how was the environment in general in the
Mhm.
university in Gdansk?
Uh, I would say it was really awesome, and it's definitely one of the best time periods in my life. And I've learned a lot, and I met some really great people, and it just passed too fast, basically. But it's actually interesting because I didn't know you took part in Erasmus exchange, because me too. I took a part in this program back in 2011 actually, and I spent entire year studying at Berlin University of Technology. So it was amazing university, and great experience basically, and so I can like compare different universities and different types of learning. But answering your original question, back then I don't know how it is like now, because a lot of have changed unfortunately. But back then it was really really amazing, and you know uh, because I can compare it with German education. There is nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to Polish teachers or Polish methods of teaching. It's really really solid university.
Well, what was, in your opinion, or for you personally, for example, the hardest subjects, or yeah, the biggest, so to say, challenges? and what was the things that you enjoyed the most?
But in Poland or in
In
Germany?
Poland, yeah, in Poland.
Oh man. So I think like the harder subject was for me. Let's see, the history of architecture and the history of architecture, and then it was another subject related to it, and it was the history of Polish architecture. And the final exam was really difficult because there were like two parts, and the first part was that you have to write something, and second part was that you have to you had a conversation with a professor, and this professor was like really old and a great guy but by all means, but it was very like I would say scary at some point. But it was very difficult because you had to memorize a lot of history facts, and actually you had to memorize a lot of blueprints of different buildings, different famous buildings in Poland from different periods of time, and not only blueprints but also some details and cross sections. So or even at some point, like how, for example, a particular facade of a church have developed over the time. So it was really difficult because a lot of memorizing and a lot of dates and stuff.
Well, I can tell you that for me in Rome, that was the hardest subject because there we have like there are three, like some of the subjects you have at the university, they're sort of connected. It's sort of like a video game. You have to pass level 1 to go to level 2 and to level 3. So history of architecture was very structured in the not in a chronological way. You would learn first modern and contemporary architecture, so that I was coming from a high school of arts, so for me that wasn't that hard, that first part,
Hmm.
because I already was like sort of leaning towards being architect, and I knew a lot about it, and it was easier because you would see like pictures of the buildings and you could remember them. But
Hmm.
the second, so this is the first level, and then you go back, starts from the beginning, and of course you will learn ancient Greece architecture, Roman architecture, and Gothic architecture, and you would have to learn 200 something buildings,
Yeah,
and as you said, remember blueprints, and for example how many columns a
yeah,
certain
yeah,
temple had and stuff like that. But it was so hard because as so far was something in Rome, it was easy because you could go and visit it. But as soon as was some temple in Greece where you would see picture and there are like two stones left, literally like
yeah, 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 yeah.
stones, and then it was a matter of luck. And I took part in this exam, and I think the first part I failed because I was really not into, like, I thought it was stupid to know these things. Like I was very much a student who was like, I understand to know the principles, but to know by heart this bullshit,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. I
nonsense.
totally agree. Yeah.
And then the second time, because really like I went with friends, and it was so funny because they would ask you one building from Greece, one building from Rome, and one building from the Gothic architecture. So you would like have 33.3% of your mark in these three things. And one friend of mine was with me, my best friend, and he goes like, if the teacher asked me these three things, I'm getting A. If she asked me these three things, I'm failing. And she asked him exactly the three things. He failed. And the second time I passed, I took like the minimum result possible. I was like, yeah, go for it. Because in Italy, if you have a bad mark, you can decide not to accept it and come back. But I'm like, no,
Oh,
I'm
that's
not doing
nice.
this again. So
That's
yeah, this is
nice.
a very hard subject in.
It's good to hear that it's not only for me. So
Yeah, but
it's
for me it was also hard, very much mathematics, because I said I was coming from a school of arts, so I was really good. I knew already how to draw in AutoCAD, how to model in Rhino. I knew a lot of history of arts, a lot of design concepts, so to say. But like physics and mathematics was a disaster.
Oh,
There was like my goal was to pass, and
uh,
I always focus on the stuff I enjoyed to get good grades, and the stuff I didn't know how to do, I would just like, it's important to pass, and that's it.
it's
Yeah.
interesting.
So, but did you do the classic bachelor and masters, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and when did you go in Erasmus to Berlin during your bachelor or during your masters?
During my bachelor, yeah, yeah. It was. I think it was the last year of my bachelor because when I came back to Poland, I had to finish my bachelor project. It was like this final project that everyone has to do, have to do. So yeah, it was I think the last year.
And how would you say, how did you see the differences between Germany and Poland? What was in Germany different, or what was,
Hmm.
how did you see the difference?
Um, well, I think that there are actually a lot of similarities, to be honest, and but again, but I would say that based on my experience in Germany, I feel like you learn more how to work in groups together, and in Poland, it's more individual approach. At least it was like when I was studying. So both have pros and cons, but I personally like more individual approach when it comes to important subjects and especially the final projects like your bachelor or master project because in Germany you can do it in groups or in pairs, and in Poland you have to do it alone. So for me, it was very important to make the entire master project by my own, and because I've learned a lot during that process. Like you have to do everything yourself, basically. Like concept, visualizations, the whole design and designing everything with a designing actual building that matches the regulations and different codes that you have in your country. So that was like really important for me. And when you work in groups, it's when there is like something important, I think that you learn only, for example, half of this because this is like only half of the task you have to do, and the other person in that group is doing other stuff. So and in Poland it was like more personal approach, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a problem when you have to work in groups in the architectural like faculties, because it happened to me also all the time that, for example, I was a very very motivated person to work, but not everybody in the group was that way, and then basically I would do the whole work anyways alone. The problem was that the work was supposed to be done in group, which was a big amount of work, and yeah, the other guys would just get the grade because I didn't want to fail the exam too. And yeah, that was a little
But
bit.
do you mean when you studied in Frankfurt or
It happens internationally. It
okay.
happens internationally. Like in Frankfurt, it was in Frankfurt it was easier to play dumb. Like being an Erasmus student, you should be the leader. But it happened in Frankfurt too.
Okay.
I think it's very hard to work with friends in the university because then you're like have breaks. Like you think this is my friend, I cannot like escalate because otherwise the friendship is ruined. So the best group works were actually with people that I didn't know before we started
Hmm.
working. And I think that the idea behind it is that they teach you to work in a group because generally you work a lot in groups when you're like a professional. But the difference is that when you're a professional, you always will have like a boss who would be the leader, and it would be a clear leadership, and then you do it all for money, so you all like nobody is demotivated when you do it for money. Like you have to do it because it's your paycheck in the end of the month. So I think that's a huge difference, because in the university there is no real, you cannot say your teammate like you need to work, that's it.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, I totally
um,
agree.
so it's hard. And you did also your master in dance too also,
Yeah.
or
Yes, 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 yes. I because you could go only from 1 year. Like the, unfortunately, I wish I could do more, but 1 year and that's it. I did two internships in the meantime, also in Germany. So that was a plus, I would say.
yeah, that was my curiosity. How did you how did you make the transition from the university to the professional field of architecture?
Hmm. Well, to be honest, like finding a job as an architect after my graduation was actually very easy for me, because by the time I already had some experience working in professional studios. I was working as an intern in two different companies in Berlin, and I also worked as a freelancer, cooperating with some local architects in Poland. And what is really funny about it, it's actually I was listening to your interview with Lucian Rakovitan, the guy who worked at Big, and it was really interesting experience for me to me because I work with his brother Horia in Berlin,
That's
and
so cool.
and it was really funny to hear all of those crazy stories once again. I say crazy, but I mean like in a very positive way. And it was really really nice to hear again these interesting stories about his traveling and career adventures. And when I heard his voice, it was like his brother, like so. So it was like really really funny.
It's such a small world of
Yeah,
like I really literally have been speaking to people from like completely different places, which I didn't know before, and then it ends up yeah, how do you know that person, or how do you know that person? Like everybody know each other, although it's scattered around Europe.
yeah.
uh,
It's a very small world.
but where did you do your first internships?
My first was actually not as an architect, but as an engineer because it was during my bachelor study, and it was right after I finished all the classes in my university in Berlin, and then I found a job basically in a local company that specialized in actually ventilation systems and like ventilation, heating, and AC, different types of buildings, mostly government buildings, like large buildings in Berlin. So that was like right off the bat, great school when it comes to working in the field and also learning German because I was working in a German company and nobody wanted to talk with me in English. Like you have to, they actually put me on the phone. First day of my of my work, they put me on the phone. I had to answer phones in German. So that was like deep sea, like deep water. I mean,
But did you know some German before you?
yes, yeah. I actually, before you were allowed to go to Germany or Spain or any kind of country outside, you had to take definitely some classes, some German classes, or generally foreign language classes, and to pass some kind of a test. I think in certain level. It was really long time ago, so I don't remember the correct level, but I think it was like A2 or B1, something like this. So in order to go somewhere else, you had to have some basics when it comes to language.
Yeah, I remember that because I wanted to go to Germany and I was considering different locations. My favorite one was Munich because there you
Hmm.
had directly a master in English. Like you could just go to the English classes. And the thing is that I didn't got the spot there. I didn't got the place for Munich because a lot of people went there, and all the other universities in the German-speaking area, which means Austria and Germany, were like, yeah, we accept you, but you have to have A2. Also, the TU Berlin, the Technical
Yeah.
University Berlin. So only Frankfurt University of Applied Sciences replied, yeah, you're supposed to have like A2, but if you don't, whatever. Like teachers are pretty open minded and they're gonna help you. And this is how I decided to go to Frankfurt because for me back in the days didn't have time to learn A2 for German language, which was I would start from zero, like
Hmm.
zero chances to learn German
Oh,
A2 in very quick. Like I didn't have really the time because university takes a lot of time when you're studying architecture, particularly.
that's true. That's true.
So I was like, and I went for Frankfurt. And also I was, another funny thing I checked is the direct flights. I needed the direct flights from Rome to there because I thought like if I need to go for back and forth, it needs to be direct flight.
Hmm.
And this is how I ended up here. And you mentioned you're still living in Berlin. When did you move then, like
Uh,
as a
like,
non-student, so to say?
okay. So I think after my I know it was 2016 actually. I got a job at Berlin, a Archviz company in Berlin, and they hired me, and I basically moved out in 2016. So around a year and a half after my graduation.
And then this is how long time ago did you move to Germany?
What would be over 4 years? I mean,
Over.
almost 4 years. I'm sorry.
And how did I did ask you something that I ask everybody? And I'm curious. Did you have the first time you moved to Germany any cultural shock? Like because a part of being an architect or studying with people and like in your daily life some differences that you notice that thought, oh, I wouldn't have thought that this is like that.
Yeah. Oh, I had like a very, very bad experience in the beginning. So it was like huge shock for me because first time I went to Berlin, it was in, I think, September 2011. And because I was starting my new year on Erasmus program. So, and I've been in Germany many times. Actually, I have a family living in Western Germany, but so I knew like Germany from the like I would say best possible perspective when it comes to how clean it is and how how rich it is when it great cars, great people, beautiful buildings. And the first day in Berlin for me, I had an apartment in eastern Berlin, eastern part of Berlin, and the conditions in this apartment, it was like a student dorm, uh, were worse than my apartment in Poland. So I was like shocked, like where, like what the hell is this? Like this is nuts. Like, and I landed on Alexanderplatz. That was the first station, and I went out, down the stairs, and there were like I don't know, like 20 homeless people laying on the ground, and there were like tents and stuff under the bridge, and I was like really shocked because this is not the picture of Germany I know when you know. So yeah, that was like a huge shock for me, and fortunately over time it went better because I found a new apartment, and it was way better after that. But the beginning was like, holy shit.
Well, for I didn't have that culture shock because Frankfurt is pretty fancy,
Yeah, I know.
Like, it's called Manhattan. That's the nickname of the city because it's like a little New York on the on the River Main.
That's true. That's true.
Um, but my culture shock was more like in the behavior of the people because I came from Italy where people are completely different, and yeah, I had to also like adapt to the local coffee quality standards. So to say, a critical mistake I was doing constantly is like in Italy when you go somewhere and eat, in the end they ask you if you want a coffee, but in Italy coffee means espresso. You don't say espresso, you say it's coffee.
Oh,
And here I would say, yeah, one coffee please, and then they would bring me like tea.
okay.
So
I get it.
so
Okay.
that was pretty bad. But at which point of this journey you took the opportunity to lean towards CGI, computer graphics? I mean, what is actually your main um, work currently, like your
Mhm.
main, because in your website, in your Instagram feed, I clearly see some architectural concepts. I don't
Yeah.
know if they're your own, and I see also this crazy realistic robot that I,
uh, yeah.
looks though like a good robot, not a robot that would kill you.
Okay. Well, glad to hear. To be honest, well, my professional background is in architecture. Uh, I actually finished master degree, uh, but currently I work as a freelancer, and I've actually do mostly different. I would say different types of 3D, but it's all related to environments and architecture. And it like I know it's like a very general thing to say, but it's mostly architecture visualizations for real estate marketing. And let's say I'm trying my best to find some job opportunities in the gaming world and movie world. So I also do some concepts again when it comes to architecture and environments for games and movies. But I
Yeah.
don't work as an architect.
And you're a freelance currently, or you?
Yes, yes.
And when did you start this activity? When did you went freelance full time? I guess.
I mean, right now in Berlin, it's quite new because I actually was working in a big company until August last year, and some this period from August till today, a couple of months, I'm freelancing basically in Germany, but I was a freelancer also in Poland.
So did you hopped on the freelance game in the middle of the pandemic? Uh,
No, 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 no. I started working as a freelancer when I was a student. I actually work with local architects, and I help with CAD drawings, some measurements, uh, obviously 3D modeling and visualization. And but I started like working more professionally uh, in 2015. Yeah, 2015 basically when I graduated, and basically I started changing a direction like to work fully in CG world, so to say.
And I'm curious, how did you start, and how do you still do client acquisition? Do you have a particular process to acquire these clients for your freelance services, or is just a matter of your personal connection to people from the field who work at some offices, and then they sort of suggest you as in case of need? How does that work?
So right now it's definitely a different situation than it was when I was in Poland, because in Poland I had to really like it was really difficult to find some clients for me when I was younger. Right now, I first of all I don't really need that much of a work right now in this particular period. I would say so I don't have to work that much, and I constantly get some emails regarding some job opportunities and freelance projects. So I it's kind of a luxury that I can actually choose what I want to do, which project would I like to pick. So I don't really look for clients right now that much.
But I mean, like, how did you start? Like, if not now, how did you start?
Oh,
How did you did? Because you have to start from somewhere.
oh, I get it. I get it. Well, it was really difficult. I had to. Oh, that's like a really long story, but it was really really difficult when you try to start from scratch and find some new clients. So I had I had to pick a phone and I simply called. I called different offices in Poland and I simply asked, "Hey, I'm doing 3D. Do you have any project, or maybe I could help?" I called different companies outside, like in the USA, in Canada, uh, Germany, and and finally, people started responding, and I was finally getting some first clients. So that's all how it started.
Did you call them and then send them sort of a portfolio
Yeah.
or a book or something like of your work?
Uh, it depends. I started actually sending emails, like general emails, and the response was like I think like maybe only 1 or 2% of emails I sent have positive response. Like I'm interested, but I don't have any job right now, and I let you know when I have something. And actually that happened a few times that they reach me reach out to me several months later and with some project. But yeah, I basically pick a phone and call them, and it was sometimes like very awkward because I remember I was once calling this office in Los Angeles, and because the guy actually wrote me back that he would like to talk with me. He saw my portfolio, he would like to talk with me about the project, and out of the blue I called him back, and he was actually on the construction side, so it was like very difficult to talk with him because he was yelling like, "Who is this?" Like, dude, what fuck, I cannot understand. And he was like, and it was like I was really stressed because that was like one of the first calls that actually the first clients that actually responded to me. And I remember I was like super stressed because the guy was like yelling at me, and he was like really angry because he was on the construction side and he was cursing all the time, and it was like it was mayhem. But then he actually wrote me back and said that, "Hey, I'm really sorry, but you just like pick the wrong time and during the day. So please call me back tomorrow on blah blah blah, and we can like have a normal conversation."
And at which point did the situation turn the opposite way, where you were like basically very now you're very free to pick? Was there a moment where you said finally I'm now in a position where it's easier.
Uh,
After how long? Or
well, I started like again professionally in 2015, so plus 5 years, I would say 5, 6 years.
but you were also working in the beginning as also as somewhere you were working
Yes,
that
yes,
you were.
I was working as a regular employee in a professional studio as well.
Yeah, so you were like, but for Siege, for Archviz, or regular architect, and then on the side doing 3D.
So okay, so from the beginning, I started as a internship as an architect. Later, I pivot myself a little bit into CG direction, and I got my first job in Berlin in Archviz studio. I worked there for almost 2 years. Then I joined a big company in Berlin where I also worked mostly in 3D, and I spent there over 2 years.
Cool. If you want to mention their names, is also possible up to you. Because in Berlin, I know the biggest 3D company I know
Oh,
personally.
it's not a secret. I work for Eve Images and later GMP Architekten,
Oh,
GMP International.
GMP.
Yeah.
At if if images we had, I think we had a
Oh,
guest. I think I don't know who worked there, but we had someone that have worked there for a certain period of time. So yeah, we had already guests from that office.
oh,
And
that's interesting.
how did you? How do you apply for a job into an architectural visualization office? Because when you work in the architectural field and you work, yeah, you apply, you just send them your architectural portfolio, which includes regular projects with plans, sections, perspective, and stuff like that. What kind of portfolio did you have for the images?
I think the process is the same. Basically, you also send a portfolio with your work, your best work, obviously, and you may get some art test. I actually, I applied to many for many jobs in architectural visualization world or industry, and a lot of times I had to make some kind of a art test.
What is this test? What does it look like?
It depends on the company, but usually again depends. But most commonly, I got, for example, a 3D model, and I just have to make some kind of image out of this. Like, this is the model we have. This is the info we have in some kind of a PDF when it comes to what kind of materials uh, you know are in on this building, and just do your best and pick the view that you want and make an image.
But and you have a deadline, or you have to do it like right away on the
Usually,
spot.
usually, yeah, usually they give you a deadline. Like, I mean, usually, I think always they give you a deadline around a week or something.
Okay, a week. Yeah, because I've heard off records that for when you send your architectural visualization portfolio, they check out the images. But of course, what is important in the industry is not only that you have great images, because yeah, it's sort of say doable, but they are also interested to discover how much time did you need for that image. Because I mean, if I wanted to start making an image myself, for example, I could model everything, render it, photoshop it, and stuff like that, but it would take me like a month for example. But if you're in a professional field, it takes, I guess, a matter of days or a week.
Yes, but this is actually a huge difference when, for example, you don't have anything else to do, and I I mean, this is good and bad because when you have like a regular work and you are applying for another job and they give you this 7 days of to accomplish this art test, it's sometimes it's really hard because you work for the most part of the day, and then that was in my case, for example. Like several times, I was when I was applying for a job, I was actually working full time. So this art test I had to do during my evenings, and this is not actually the best, the most optimal way, because you have life besides this art test, and it's not always like the easiest way to manage to do everything you want.
Yeah, I guess you needed to do like a week sprint where you would sleep very few hours and accomplish the task. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, maybe once I had like this situation.
I understand. And what is your current workflow? What do you use? How do you work? I suppose 3ds Max and then V-Ray, or I mean, you can
Yes.
explain yourself
Yeah,
how.
I mostly use 3ds Max and V-Ray. Uh, Obviously Photoshop, and I also started learning Unreal. So I'm actually doing right now an animation in Unreal. So I think it will be my like second rendering software.
And you said you would like to transition into the world of games or movies. Um, I think that the movie industry is not doing great right now because of the situation we're living around the world. That movie production is it's a little bit down. A little bit. It's an euphemism. It's really down. What skills do you know? Like, what would be that? What skills would you need to develop to start working into that field? And do you have a particular roadmap you have set for yourself towards these goals, or is just currently an idea?
Hmm. Uh, Obviously, I have a plan, and I actually had a big plan. But then in 2020, COVID happened, so I had to change all of the plans. So it's really difficult to plan anything right now, especially long term related. But yeah, but answering your question, I don't see myself making renderings for the rest of my life. I would say, if there is one thing that I've learned over the years is that the 3D world is very diverse, and when it comes to architecture, it's very limited. And when I see it, you know. I have a quite good overview what's going on in different companies in Archviz related, and the actual level of 3D is more like a kindergarten when you compare it with the VFX or gaming world, So, but fortunately, there are a lot of similarities, like especially in software. So there are basically certain set of skills you have to learn in order to work in 3D for gaming industry or movie industry, and this is something I'm doing right now. Like for example, by learning Unreal. So Unreal is a great tool that you can use in both industries, in gaming world and in movies. So for virtual production, for example. So there are like a different things that you can develop over the time when you have a very solid background when it comes to 3D in general.
Yeah, I have myself a cousin who is educated as an architect, but then he transitioned through VFX and totally different industries because also, as you might know, in Bulgaria there are a lot of movie productions,
Mhm.
um, especially like Hollywood movie productions. They go to Bulgaria, film it there because we have a filming center and it's way cheaper to do it there. And this is an industry that in Bulgaria, I don't know, as far as I've heard, it's an industry that's going down a little bit, of course, because it's less productions than the usual. But I know also that in that field, people are more into using different softwares like Cinema 4D, Maya, Houdini, and stuff like that. So I'm also curious, do you think you will need to also develop skills into these other softwares, or do you have already skills in in these softwares? Or
Um,
3ds max is also because if you like this topic, we have had also role oh my god, Laurie Rowan, sorry, on the podcast. He's a British guy in the animations field, and he goes with 3ds max and does a lot of very cool things. So
yeah,
I'm curious, what is your opinion?
yeah, I think having a solid knowledge in 3ds Max and V-Ray, it's really good for industry like movies, VFX, or gaming, because it's an industry standard. You're not gonna be able to quickly pivot yourself when you know only, for example, Rhino and Corona. And unfortunately, 3ds Max, Maya, and V-Ray, like these are the softwares that are standards in the industry, and you can use them for architecture, and but you can also use them for movie production, and get very impressive results. When it comes to software, I feel it's like a little bit like learning a language. So sometimes you have to like there are softwares that like many languages have a lot of similarities, like like Slavic languages. You can communicate easily, and it's the same with software. It's just finding the right buttons and knowing more, but the principles are, I would say, the same.
And do you think that into specializing in this field, your abilities into mathematics and physics you had in the beginnings were somehow a factor? Because as you told me during your high school graduation, you picked them as a sort of
Yeah.
topic of of your graduation. Do you think that you need to have some mathematical thinking or coding? I don't know, what is your skill into that to be good in this field?
Oh, that's a broad topic again. But I think that when it comes to math in general, and especially science and physics, I think everyone should have some kind of a basic of it, because it's not only about calculating, different equations. It's more like helping you how to think. And if that would be up to me, I would probably put math and physics in any kind of type of faculty in the study, because I think it's a very important and powerful tool to learn creative and reasonable thinking. And obviously, if you are an engineer, it's a must. But in any field, again, math and physics helps a lot. I don't mean like a nuclear science or something, but like some basics, like I think it's definitely helping to make a decision and the way you think, even if you don't know about it. It's like It's in the back of your head, I would say. I don't know how to explain it.
Yes, yes, I understand what you mean, but I'm curious to know also for people who might be interested into going your way or to switch from architecture to Archviz or special effects or movie productions. Uh, in the practice, what are the skills you need to for the work? Because I saw like you have some I have known the image right now in front of my face, but I think in Instagram you have posted also some sort of parametric connections between some tools in 3ds Max or V-Ray. So what do you need, something parametrical in your work or coding in your practical world? Oh, practical, yeah, practice.
Hmm. It depends what you would like to do, actually, because there are jobs that requires knowing basic coding like Python or C++ or C sharp. But also there are like some kind of jobs that doesn't require that. And again, having if you already have a background in architecture and you studied architecture and you want to change the industry to Archviz or anything else, you have a very solid foundation in everything, I would say, and I wouldn't be worried about it too much. However, if you are starting from zero and you have like no idea about like geometry, how to read blueprints, like floor plans, how to imagine, like things from 2D to 3D, then you may have some kind of you may have some problems actually in these industries. Like you have to have this imagination.
Yes, of course, because you have to have architectural thinking, of course. But from what I've learned from people from the field and generally from people in the industry, um, there is this sort of trilogy, so to say, to have a good image, which is good model, good materials, and good lighting. From what I've heard, do you have any tips or suggestions? Uh, Not from people who are starting from scratch, because this is not the people who we are talking to, because the people who are starting from scratch are probably people who are joining universities now or are in the university. But for example, your personal experience, how did you develop your skills first into modeling in 3ds Max in the software? Where did you go to learn more about how to make the materials of the different 3D objects? Because, for example, the materials, how they gonna work into the model, it's nothing really related to what you study in architecture. It's not really
Okay.
something that you have studied in architecture or lighting. Like this is, as you said, more maybe a photographical background would be helpful.
Hmm. Well, to be honest, like I think if you if you're starting in CG and you have no idea how to use 3ds Max and make materials or shaders, I think the best way for you is to simply join a studio and work in a professional environment with other people that can teach you basically. uh, I was fortunate enough to work with great 3D artists at Eve Images, and I actually one of my friend right now who is one of the best 3D artists I know. His name is Mateusz, but basically he taught me a lot actually, and what is more important, he taught me a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to learn by myself by watching a tutorial, because you know having a technical knowledge is important and it's a part of this process, but then you have something like how to use those skills working in a professional environment with other people, when you have to use you have to work together. You have to use different files, different you have different pipelines, different workflows, and how do you use these skills to in order to implement them into a workflow. So technical aspects, how to model things and shaders, this is something what you can learn, but having someone who has is better than you and has this practical experience, it's one of the best things what you can do.
I get it. And but did you start when did you start working in the professional field of archivist? I guess the first job you got, you didn't start from zero. So did you learn the basics of the software or how to start,
Yeah.
sort of maneuvering on your own? Or did you start, did you join some class back in the days? Some Now there are a lot of, master classes from academies, like I would think State of Art Academy. It's one school in Italy which offers like they call it like a master, like a 5 or 6 weeks where you go full time for archivist. Or did you start on your own?
I started by my own. Like I said, I like my first job as a freelancer was when I was still a student, basically, and I had to learn some basic stuff. Like, I mean, when you're studying architecture, you have to learn some kind of 3D skills, and you will learn them over along the way. So this is something that you will learn either in some kind of classes or by yourself. And this basic 3D stuff I've learned at school, and over the years I have to learn more and more. And so I learned SketchUp, I learned Rhino. Actually, like the first software I used professionally was Rhino and Maxwell Render. And then I started using V-Ray and 3ds Max. So in the beginning, most of the thing I had, like the basics, I had to learn by myself.
I see. Well, this is what it happens for the majority of the people who have heard from, and we have guests who have taken part in this sort of full time workshops for several weeks, and they say that this is a very good, uh, so to say, base of start, because you build your foundation, and then from there, it's sort of they if you start to learn something together, alone, you have to put all the information together on your
Yes.
own, and this is
And on
the
the other hand, you also have to be very cautious about paying and buying some kind of masterclass academy, or some kind of online training, because unfortunately, a lot of people who are producing tutorials, they don't have a practical experience, like actually producing images for the clients and working in a professional environment with other people. And it's a significant difference between working by your own as a freelancer in your, I don't know, like in your parents' basement, and working in a team when you have to like deliver images based on on the pipeline that it is in each company.
Yes, that's for sure. But these are not tutorials; they're really like classes, which are based, I think, on also like they're taught by people who have a studio. So it's like real life based teaching, and they're very expensive. So
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I know the state of art academy, and I'm not talking about like this big,
yeah,
you know, master classes. I'm talking about like smaller things you can find,
yeah, tutorials. Yeah.
Gumroad or even like on YouTube.
Well, that's with every workflow. For example, me personally, like when I was used to draw my drawings in the architectural university, was one thing, and when I joined my first internship and the first architectural practice, I learned so many other things on the side, which were about how to organize your folders, how to organize your workflow, how to organize your setup when you work, even if you're drawing on a Beam or CAD software. So uh, I say always like university and tutorials and stuff like that. It's like when you go to driving school because they teach you how to drive, but when you start driving on your own the car, it's a different experience because you don't follow the strict rules you needed to follow during the driving school. You need to start applying your skills into the real life on the road. So this is sort of a very very more complex situation, but in the similar way, like what you learn in the school is just a simulation of something that's way different
Yeah, I
in
agree. I agree.
reality. And I'm curious to transition to be a freelancer. It was a long process which developed along the years. Can you say roughly what kind of investment you needed to do to set up this structure? Because I mean, a part of the softwares we were talking about, you need also like, especially in this industry of Archviz and 3D art, also great hardware. You need a great computer.
To be honest, I would have a good hardware anyway. It wasn't like for me the biggest issue to buy something better, because I always like had this for my job when I was working as a student, because you also need kind of powerful machine in order to accomplish different projects when you're studying. For me, it wasn't like an investment that, okay, I'm starting freelancing right now and I have to buy a new workstation. I just, bought a new work. Actually, I bought a used one, and I modified it over the years. But it wasn't. But I've been using this machine also when I was working in a company, like in the office. So it's like a long term investment, I would say.
Yes, for example, in Bulgaria, I know from friends that it's a practice to buy some used workstations online from, like, which originally would cost
Hmm.
10,000 euros or something, and buy them for regenerated for like 1,000, and then build upon the structure, and then you have for little more than 1,000 euros a great workstation. um I mean, I think we have covered most of the topics we could talk. I think we could go on and on endlessly, because it's a very large topic. I'm very curious, something that I want to ask you, because as I told you in the beginning of our conversation, I found out about you from the V-Ray page, who reshared your artworks with the robots. And I noticed, what was surprising to me is that a great 3D artist as you, or with the great work, has a still relatively small channel. Did you start your social media game recently, or weren't pointing that much on this?
Yeah, I actually I started it's quite recently, last year. And to be honest, it's a little bit problematic for me because I couldn't care less about social media. And I am like, if there is like, for me, if there is like a one person or two people who are liking my job, liking my work, and have something nice to say, then I'm a happy man. I basically, it was never my goal to like build thousands of followers or something like this. I upload once a while, and again, if someone like it, awesome. If someone like have some cool comment or interesting comment that can actually help me, then it's also great. But it wasn't like it was never my biggest issue, to have like a lot of followers and a lot of likes.
Yes, yes.
I just do it like for fun. And again, if I can win a V-Ray license once a while, thanks to that, then I am a happy man.
No, it's great. I was just curious because a lot of the people in the industry use it as their how to say their sort of sales proposition tool.
I never got any serious client from social media.
Yes, yeah.
90% of clients that are serious, they write me an email or they call me.
I mean, or you call them.
Or I call them.
As a final question, now I'm trying to do something a little different so that it gets sort of more interesting for the listeners. I'm trying to ask every one of my guests to finish the conversation with a little creative or inspirational trigger. And I wanted to ask you what would be the first thing that would pop up in your mind in matter of a book or a song or a movie that you enjoy consuming or you reading or watching, something like that.
Oh man, so many. Well, definitely, if you are into visual world, follow great DPs and great movies like with great cinematography. I highly recommend like people like Roger Deakins, uh, Janusz Kaminski, Lubeski, these kind of guys. And when it comes to books, uh, I personally I read a lot of books. I really like reading books, and right now I'm finishing a book that is not really related to architecture. So just the, it's actually about finding the Northwest Passage. The book is Terror by I think Simmons is the last name of the writer. But it's not related to architecture, and I need to have some kind of entertainment in my life that is not related to architecture because I would go crazy otherwise.
That's also, I think, a great advice. If you, it's so for the people who are listening, they should know that also it's important to go away from the field and look somewhere else for inspiration.
Oh man,
Um,
and if there are any men listening to this, don't ever bore your date with architecture or some details when you're having a date with a girl or something.
well, currently it's not suggested to
Oh
dating.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I hope you don't date too many people or don't bore your partner already. Anyways, it was great chatting with you. Before we also finish, I want to ask you to tell people where they can find your work online.
Sure. So, well, they can find my work by typing my name. It's Jakub Sobiczewski, but if it's if it may be difficult for some people, you can just find my architecture visualizations at gammavisualsolutions.com, or find me on Instagram if you like. It's Jakub point so or Gamma Visual if you're into only architecture.
Nice. I will link all these pages in the description, and I want to thank myself, all the listeners who were listening, and you were great, and remind them that if they like that this podcast and this show, they can just support it by following our Instagram page at TCI Podcast, or Facebook and LinkedIn the Creative Insider. And we have also a newsletter you can join, in the also in the description of this episode, where you would get interesting materials every month about the best of the podcast and what was going on. So thank you very much, Jakub.
Thank you.
I wish you a great day, and yeah, hope to talk to you again soon.
Uh,
Bye.
yes, again, thank you very much, and I hope I didn't bore anybody.
You didn't. You were actually kind of inspirational, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
The whole world stops just like that.